Hey, this is Connor with CongruentX, and today I'm going to show you how to start a career in PowerApps. So you're here because you want to start a career in PowerApps. Everybody's path can look a little bit different, but I think the one thing that's in common is you've got to build something. You'll be a much more valuable candidate if you can show you can take an idea and build it. And that's exactly what this three-part series is going to do. We're going to take 3 different ideas and turn them into functional. You can do all the studying you want, you can have all the search you want, but to actually land the job, you've got to be able to take those and apply those to the real world. So I'll encourage you to follow along or skip around as you need, and then ultimately find something you want to make and make it. Okay, so our first project is going to be Connor's Scoops, a local, totally real ice cream shop that wants to improve customer experience by getting to know their customers better. And to do that, they're going to do a couple things. We're going to manage ice cream flavors, so keep track of what we got. Manage customers. We want to track customers' purchases, and we want to track product costs. So how much are the materials to make the ice cream? We definitely want some reports to visualize the data. And there's 2 pieces of automation we want to build. We want to send customers a thank you after they bought something. And after a customer buys 5 things, we're going to send them a coupon for 10%. So let's start at the foundation here, and that's going to be our database. So where are customers going? Where are ice cream flavors going? And I'm going to use this drawing tool here because I promise you don't want me to actually draw this out. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a little rectangle for each thing that we need to keep track of. So the main thing is going to be our ice cream. And we know we need to keep track of customers. We know we also have purchases that we want to keep track of. And those are really the 3 main things that we're dealing with here. We might add some as we go along, but for now, let's stick with these 3. So now let's figure out what are the relationships between these 3 things. And as we go, we might have to add some things, but when you're starting with an idea and turning it into an app, it's a really good idea to understand foundationally how things are working. When we think about relationships in PowerApps or Dataverse, there's typically 2 you're thinking about. There's either one-to-many or many-to-one. There are some other options, but we'll get into those later. In this case, we have one customer related to multiple purchases, right? So one customer can buy multiple things. And the way I like to draw relationships is the arrow points to the many side. So again, we have one customer related to multiple purchases. Now let's think about purchases in ice cream. We're gonna have a one-to-many relationship. One ice cream flavor can be related to many different purchases, right? Because 5 people in a day could purchase vanilla and 6 people in another day could purchase chocolate. So the way I would describe that relationship is you have one ice cream related to multiple purchases. And again, we're going to use our arrow, and we are going to point the arrow in the direction of the many side. So to summarize, we have one customer related to many purchases, and we have many purchases related to one ice cream. This is going to be our foundation of the app that we're going to build. So let's hop into Dataverse and start building out these tables. So for this series, we're going to use Dataverse to build all of our tables. So to start building, we need to create a solution. And I've got a whole video dedicated to solutions, but for today, you can just think of a solution as a folder that's going to contain all of our tables and the things that we're doing for this ice cream shop. So let's create a new solution. And let's call it Connor's, it was called Connor's Scoops. I really should know the name of my own business. And for the publisher, we'll add a new publisher. And I'm gonna add CongruentX. All right, now that we've got our solution, let's start building our tables. And let's reference our drawing again. And let's start with customers. So in Dataverse, there's a bunch of tables that come what I call out of the box, right? They're already included into the system. And when you're thinking about designing a system, you always want to consider what is already there. And in our case, there's already a table in the system called contacts. And that's a table to represent people. So some of the fields that are already there are like first name, last name, email, things like that. And so we're going to use that table to represent our customers. So all we're going to do is we're going to add an existing table. I'll search for contact, and we're going to add that to our solution. We're not going to add any objects yet. An object would be like a view or a field or a form. We're going to keep it blank for now, and we'll add things as we go. Next, let's look at ice cream. So depending on what you have installed, you may or may not have a table that's great to store ice cream flavors. So in our case, we're just going to build it. So this time we're going to go to New Table. We'll call it Ice Cream Flavors. Let's hit save. All right, so our table has now been created. Let's take a look at the columns. So if you think about like an Excel sheet that has rows and columns, columns are all the details we're going to capture for a specific ice cream flavor. And our rows are going to be all the different flavors in the system. So out of the box, when you create a table, there's a bunch of fields that get added, and most of them are not going to mean anything to us today. The one we will use is name, and that's going to be the name of the ice cream flavor. So we've already got that. Great. If we look back to our requirements, there's one thing I know we need to add, right? We know we want to keep track of product costs. So let's add that as a field here. That way we can keep track of how much each flavor costs. I'm going to go to add a new column, hit cost. So the data type is going to be currency. And we'll just keep it all simple out of the box. All right, we've got cost added. Another thing we need to keep track of is price, right? Because we want to compare how much does this cost us versus how much are we selling it for. And let's maybe just assume this is like one scoop, right? We're going to keep track of everything at the scoop level. Here's another field called price. That's also going to be currency. Okay, if we look back at our diagram here, the last thing we have left are purchases. And again, depending on what you've got installed, you may or may not have a table that works for purchases. Again, in our case, we're just going to create it from scratch to keep things simple. So let's go to create a new table. Okay, now that we've got our purchases table, let's think about the different columns we're going to need to add. One I can think of is quantity. We want to know how much of something we bought. And that's going to be a number type and a whole number. And the other two things we want to keep track of is who bought it, right? Which customer. And we want to keep track of what they bought, the ice cream flavor. Now, this is where our relationships come into play, right? We have one ice cream related to multiple purchases and one customer related to multiple purchases. These are our relationships to this table. And the way I always like to add relationships is I think of the lookup field. You can think of a lookup field as just a reference to another thing. So from the purchases table, we want to keep track of who the customer is. We want to look up the customer. So again, the way I like to do this is to start with the lookup. And we're going to go new column. And we're going to type in customer. and we're gonna add a lookup field. And because a lookup is a reference to another table, we have to tell it what that table is. And in our case, a customer is always gonna be a contact. All right, so from our purchase table, we have a lookup field called customer. And check it out, from our contact table, if you go to relationships, you'll see that customer relationship. And you can see from the contact's perspective, it's a one-to-many, because again, one customer to multiple purchases. So the second relationship we need to add is the ice cream, right? For every purchase, we want to know what ice cream was purchased. So this time, let's do it the other way. Instead of creating the lookup field that creates the relationship, let's just start with the relationship. So let's go to our purchase table. And instead of adding a field, we're going to add relationship. And from the perspective of the purchase table, that's going to be a many to one. We have many purchases related to one flavor. And this is just a visualization of that. We got many purchases related to one ice cream flavor. And you can see here it's asking us, what do we want to name the lookup field, right? Because for every one-to-many or many-to-one relationship, there will be a lookup field. And the way I remember it is the lookup field is always on the many side of the relationship. I'm going to call this lookup column ice cream flavor. And let's hit done. All right, that's all we need to do to build the database. We've got our purchases, we've got our customers, we've got our ice cream flavors. In our purchases, we can store which customer bought it and what they bought and how much of it they bought. And in our ice cream flavors, we can store the different kinds of flavors we have, how much they cost, and how much we're selling them for. I know some of this is a bit ambiguous, so in our next episode, we're gonna be building our model-driven app where we can start to visualize how all of these things are working together. As always, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel if you like what you're seeing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.